Hello, thank you for joining us for this webinar about Confronting Coronavirus What's Next, presented by HSMAI. My name is Bob Gilbert, the President and CEO of the association. Today we're going to talk about what sales professionals can do to stay proactive. HSMAI is committed to helping our members navigate this rapidly changing landscape, and we've assembled a Global Resource Center at hsmai.org. As you may know, this is the fourth webinar in this special series. Recaps of the previous three: legal insights on the pitfalls and protocols of hotel sales contracts, pricing psychology in challenging times, crisis communications, and marketing expert insights can be found there. Our purpose today is to do two things. One, provide you with some specific buyer insights for the hotel industry, and two, illustrate how to bounce back. We believe the buyer insights will bolster your sales efforts and enable you to implement tactics that will ensure the fastest recovery possible. Being deliberate about your bounce back strategy will enable you to mitigate the effects of the current situation and ensure that you've got all the fundamentals in place. Our format today will have two short presentations, and then we'll save about 10 minutes for your specific questions. Please make notes on your screen where the question box is and be prepared to post your questions here. This webinar is also being recorded and will be available for anyone to view on the HSMAI website for free. Now, without further ado, let me introduce the two subject matter experts we have with us today. Our first presenter is Amy Infante, the CEO and visionary of GitGo. GitGo is a hotel lead generation and training company. Amy is also a member of the HSMAI America's Sales Advisory Board. Following Amy will be Ed Skapinok. Most recently, Ed was the Senior Vice President of Sales, Marketing, and Revenue and Reservations for Aqua Ashton Hospitality. Before that, he was the VP of Sales and Marketing for Hostmark Hospitality Management. Ed also happens to be the immediate past chair of the HSMAI Sales Advisory Board. Amy and Ed, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Bob. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with everybody today. I also really appreciate everybody to engage and take the time to be here with us. My hope is that I can illuminate some possibilities for you all and inspire action to serve the industry so that we can come out of this crisis even better. I know, along with my friend and partner in this webinar, Ed Skapinok, we are both honored to be able to share with you all today. So, to get us started, let me take you way back to what feels so long ago, December 2019. This is a time when my team at GitGo did a 3-year look-back study on over 30,000 hours per year of voice of the customer research with small and mid-sized companies. And the purpose was to take a deeper dive into the B2B buyer journey for hotels. We did this because for several years, we could see a pain point many hotels were having with creating sustainable, proactive, new business development processes and systems. I ran across a lot of confusion between what I call the B2B buying cycle versus the booking window. Now, we don't have a lot of time to unpack all the information Ed and I truly want to share with you today, so I'm going to cut to the chase as much as I can on 3 years worth of data, surveys, insights, buyer behavior, and please feel free to save questions because there will be some time at the end. So now we're here. It's April 2020, and I think we can all agree that the immediate reactive business model has come to a screeching halt. It will come back in some form. But now is the time to embrace and learn these proactive fundamentals and remember that it must be created in a sustainable manner so that we can always impact the business no matter the immediate economic concerns. So just a quick background on the study. This was taking about 500,000 connection points per year, specifically with the small and mid-sized companies. We know these to be businesses in the backyards of hotels. They're not your global accounts. They don't have mandated travel programs or even necessarily a travel manager. And our firm focuses on these companies because our clients who are brands, management companies, and hotel ownership groups have found that this business represents tremendous opportunity for their hotels for new untapped sales revenue. We also know historically from past downturns that the small and mid-sized category is the ones to come back in the B2B space the quickest, both from the backyard and then from the drive market. So keep in mind, these are unmanaged accounts with very fragmented decision-making, so it can be a little tricky sometimes for organizations to wrap their arms around this. And the study affected over 740 hotels in 50 different markets that spanned from both Tier 1 and Tier 3, so your major downtown markets as well as your tertiary third-tier markets. And the outcome of this study was really twofold. I want to specifically focus on two of the key outcomes. So one, we were able to build out the B2B buyer's journey, sharing 3 core competencies or areas of focus for sales professionals. And I'm going to share some statistics and examples as best I can in the short amount of time we have. The second piece was we uncovered what we call the rule of 7+. Simply, this states that from the time proactive engagement begins with a prospective client for a hotel, there is typically about a 7-month lag or longer between then and when the client will have business for your hotel. We showed that what we perceive to be the buying cycle in our industry is actually a reactive booking window. But when a sales team intentionally deploys a proactive process for sales, you see a buying cycle of 7+ months. So in fact, 77% of the revenue we discovered over the 3 years that we conducted this study was 7+ months out. So I've been really passionate over the past several years to decommoditize hotels and help teams deploy proactive processes and strategies to help create sustainable, qualified sales pipelines. Unfortunately, outside forces have jumped in the form of a worldwide pandemic, and it's brought this issue even more to the forefront. What we're seeing today is massive disruption in the buying behaviors of customers. So outside of some outliers and essential COVID-19 related travel, all inbound RFPs have stopped. And without the inbound inquiries needing rates, dates, and space for the next 30, 60, or 90 days out, it forces long-term proactive business development fundamentals to come front and center. We want to make that transition for sales teams more clear by prioritizing what we call the hidden revenue zone and the influence zone, which I'll dive into a little bit deeper. But first, I want to share some proof and hope for why we know this approach works. The numbers on this slide are GitGo's March 2020 sales statistics. And again, I'm only showing this as a glimmer of hope to the industry. So on the left-hand side, the 1.14 million is booked business. It happens to be COVID-19 related essential travel. Now, a lot of people are asking who's still traveling. So the examples of this are traveling nurses and medical related business, transportation companies related to oil and gas and retail, utilities and government related travel, cleaning and hygiene companies as well fit into these companies that we've seen booking business now. The sourced business in the middle was initially found proactively and is now at the proposal stage. So it's mainly full of companies putting feelers out for Q3 and Q4 business. But this business is changing daily, if not hourly, as news continues to evolve. And the main point I want to make here is that just because things are changing on a dime, sales should not be giving up. Through this crisis, we are building really strong relationships, and the companies are appreciating and valuing the adaptability and flexibility of the sales teams being able to help them through those changes. The marketing qualified leads discovered that 290,000 showing up on the end. It did trend down in March as contacts transitioned from work from home. It took a bit longer to reconnect and have discussions with things leveling off and our team deploying new tactics to connect with customers. We expect the marketing qualified leads and even those sales qualified leads in the middle number to show growth in April and in the coming months. So this is why we know proactive sales still works and should absolutely remain a focus for the throughout the pandemic. Now I want to take you through the business-to-business buyer journey model that was the outcome of that 3-year study. Let's work our way backwards. So you see the maroon, which is the commoditization zone. This is reactive. It's a place where the buyer has already completed 60 to 70% of their buying process, and then they reach out needing rate, dates, and space. We're really good at this process in the industry. We have so many tools designed to assist sales teams to capture and respond to that business quickly. Within this zone, though, we've asked our sellers to really quickly react, which creates a compressed sales cycle that can be quite stressful. I'm sure you're all familiar with, responses that are due within 24 hours or less. We hear things like, don't call the decision maker directly, and you end up in a place of making assumptions and just giving it your best shot, hoping you were on the mark. So this is a place you don't want to ever be in sales. But 99% of sales teams have lived in this space for well over 70% of their business. So this is the part of the current panic because this zone has come to a screeching halt right now. So we would like to see more energy spent in the other two zones. The hidden revenue zone, which is there in your green, it relates to the buyer's journey at the point when they are just beginning to conduct research and realize that they need to travel or host an event. So 54% of the revenue we discovered in our study was found in this part of the buying process. In the gold, the influence zone relates to the stage in the buyer journey when they are more deeply evaluating solutions and making internal business cases. So likely at this point, the clients are researching your website and capabilities, making assumptions about your hotel, but not yet reaching out to you to ask further questions. They're eliminating options here, and that's kind of the scary point when you're in sales. So this is why having relevant, updated digital information is so critical to work with your marketing department. And this also represents 23% of the revenue we discovered initially when we started doing the outreach. So keep in mind, this is why both the hidden revenue zone and the influence zone really have to work together. If we go back to the commoditization zone now and take a deeper look at what I mean about this compressed sales cycle, you can see by the list of tactics here in this funnel that when we're in this zone, sales professionals have to be really nimble and move quickly. You also lose a lot of opportunity here because you can't possibly get all of this accomplished in a 24-hour or less period, which is often the case in what we're asked to do. So our suggestion has always been to shift activity into a more proactive mode. Our rule of 7+ says that if we shift the discovery into the hidden revenue zone and rapport building into the influence zone, we have a much stronger opportunity to convert business than by reacting to the needs as they come in. We're also seeing right now that there's a lot of analysis going on with customers when you can partner with them early on. And now's a great time as they have less distractions. Now, this is where I understand that there could be some rub during our current situation. The hidden revenue zone focuses potential customers where there are typically no prior relationships. The customer is in their very early stages, and generally they aren't engaging yet with sellers unless you're reaching out to them. But remember, 54% of the revenue potential we discovered was here, and that's just scratching the surface. And finding them here gave us a lot of runway to discover needs and then build trust. So what I'm hearing from sellers and leaders alike right now is that they don't want to sell during this time of crisis for everyone, as there's a fear of becoming or coming across as insensitive. So here's my response to that. Proactive sales should never be positioned as a pitch. You are not pitching anything. You are simply discovering, right? We're in the discovery zone with the client if the companies are a right fit. Simply stated, we really have to shift this inaccurate, misguided story we tell ourselves that we will discover immediate business from proactive sales activities. Consider it surprise and delight for both the client and the seller when you happen to call at just the right moment when they need you. As an example, our 3-year data shows that only 11% of the connections we made were with customers that had a need in the next 90 days. Of that 11%, the majority were too far down their buying process, and the property didn't gain that business. In fact, only one opportunity that was discovered that late in the game moved to proposal stage, just one. But what they did gain was the start to a relationship for the next piece of business and the next piece after that. They were building relationships. So approach the conversation as an opportunity to learn what is going on for that company and what they project for the future of their travel. So I really love asking questions like, what would travel normally look like for you, and how do you see that changing? Have that kind of dialogue, and I guarantee that those types of conversations will eventually transfer to cash for your hotel. Another concern I've heard is that sellers feel inauthentic calling it at this time when they don't have a previous relationship. I hear a lot of suggestions to call and just ask how somebody is doing. And that's great, but I can see where it would feel inauthentic to ask a stranger how they're doing when they know your job is in sales. So I can tell you this much. My team has had great results connecting with contacts who have no prior relationship by asking quality, educated questions about their business. You want to be compassionate to the situation, but curious. Talk to them about the future. And by all means, if it's not a good time to talk, then respect that. But don't overreact to one negative triggered response if you do get someone who's upset that you've reached out to. You know your heart's in the right place. When we open up to questions, I'd love to hear if any of you are running up or bumping up against something that I can help with in that area. We're talking about it constantly within our team. So let's jump back into the influence zone. I know I've been on this slide for a little while. In the influence zone, this gold area, I've always said that it is my favorite place to be as a seller, and it's even more critical today. This is the zone where you have great responsibility to transition from reactive, transactional sales to firmly establish yourself as a trusted advisor. And we absolutely are seeing customers, especially in the small and mid-sized business space, really needing this and asking for it right now. Just think, they have fragmented decision making. They don't have designated people in the travel sector. They need you. They need your expertise, and they have a lot of questions. We're having conversations to guide buyers to hotels that are still open, discussing options for places to place their business in Q3 and Q4, because we want to get that established sooner than later, because we know there's still going to be increased demand for dates when everyone is able to travel again. The other key point I want to make here is that by working in this influence zone, you have the opportunity to help customers write their RFP. So it's no question that many companies will have to issue an RFP, but we've had a lot of luck getting in at the ground level and actually influencing them by what goes into the RFP. So we have a customer who's benefited from this recently, discovering the opportunity about 8 months prior to when the customer was going to issue their RFP. And it was through the nurture process that and educating them over those 8 months that there was a lot of trust earned. And when the RFP came out, it was familiar, actually. Essentially, it was written by the sales team. So that gives an incredible advantage to win the business. The influence zone is all about becoming a trusted advisor. And I know Ed has some good points to make on this in a bit as well. So moving on, in order to speed up here, I know Ed has so much great to share with you about the mitigation and recovery. I just want to summarize some key areas I see sellers can deploy from the fundamental standpoint using the buyer model and the rule of 7+. Not just in the current situation, but for all future. So in the hidden revenue zone, customers are truly engaging right now. There's less noise, and they're taking time to connect and share more than they ever have before the pandemic. Now is the time to sharpen your skills, specifically in the areas of proactive business development. So how to ask quality questions, open-ended questions, efficient and effective sales research. Lastly, in this area, the biggest concern I have is teams need to have an effective follow-up and nurture process in place to ensure that these proactive leads are not lost in the process. This, I believe, is the single biggest risk to sales teams. 100% of the teams we work with need some form of assistance with their follow-up and nurture process. Really work with your marketing teams, create a strategy, automation. It's really important that we don't rely on just the intuition of our sales teams in this area. In the influence zone, like I said, become a trusted advisor. They need and want this at the customer level. We need to get a seat at the table with customers and just not allow the reactive transactional sales to rule the day. And then, of course, we've got our commoditization zone, and I think that goes without saying. This is where you can still help drive some revenue depending on your market. So before I turn it over to Ed, who has a deeper dive on some of these key tactics to mitigate now in the commoditization zone, as we all work on fundamentals and recovery in these other two zones, I want to point out that one key thing to keep in mind, we are hearing across the board in small and mid-sized companies especially, but also in larger corporations. Also speaking from my own experience leading a small business, I can tell you that businesses are not playing just to survive right now. They are playing to win. They know they need partners to do this, and they are looking to have conversations now as they are planning their own tech moves and their recovery and even their own growth opportunities. So they're eager to do the things they need to do to get back on pace for the year, and travel absolutely is part of that. So now is the time you should be connecting. I'll send it over to Ed now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. And your team's research really emphasizes why it's so important for hotels to do what they can right now to mitigate the effects of the current situation and focus on the fundamentals of sales. And as Bob said, doing so will help all of us bounce back as quickly as possible. I do want to emphasize some of the points that you made and talk through some specifics of what all of the hotel teams that we have on the line could be doing in each of these areas. So a few weeks ago, I set out to put together a presentation on what hotels could do when demand was falling. And I was talking with a hotel executive about current topics, and one of the questions we talked about was whether or not they should furlough their sales team. And I stressed that the lost business implications of doing so could actually cost the hotel more than the expense reductions would save. This person responded to me, "There are no leads coming in right now. What are salespeople supposed to do?" So that comment was very eye-opening to me. It concerns me quite a bit. And if responding to leads is all that company's salespeople are doing, then I'm very worried about their future. So hopefully this isn't the case with your hotels, everyone on the line. But even if it is, you and your salespeople can still make the efforts now to improve the situation from where it is today. As Amy demonstrated in her comments about the influence zone, the work being done by your sales team today will determine how quickly your hotel recovers. So even if you have laid off or furloughed salespeople, or your hotel is even closed right now, it's not too late to re-engage staff or initiate a number of the following activities, even in a modified form or schedule. Remember that sales isn't a person or expense that comes and goes with nightly occupancy. It's a process, an effort, and the time to be selling your hardest is right now. So as I mentioned, in early March, I set out to do a presentation to talk about what hotels should be doing, but demand was falling so quickly, the situation was changing, and it made a lot of the information really inapplicable. So even still, it is worth restating a few of these things that you could do now to mitigate the effects of the current situation. First is a very basic idea, but I think it does help with consistent communication and providing information during a crisis like this. Script the answers to frequently asked questions with how you want your salespeople or other staff to handle inquiries about things like cancellation, attrition, terms for new bookings, and even things like guest safety, social distancing, or other precautions being taken at your hotels. You can add this to your website or have it in a PDF form that you can email. Second is to really focus on shifting share. This should always be the target of the sales department. But when the size of the demand pie shrinks, you want to make sure that your piece of the pie is growing relative to your competitors. So how do we do that? Well, regardless of what demand for rooms is like in your market, are you doing a better job or worse job of capturing the available business in your competitive set? So this means getting to know the business that you don't know. Who is actually staying in hotels right now? Amy referenced a few of these from the $1.4 million that her team has booked just in the month of March, which is probably our worst month ever in this business. So visit your competitors, review market intelligence reports, make notes and print reports from sources like Agency 360, Nolan, Cvent, and keep them in a file that you can reference in the future. Right now, anybody who's staying in a hotel is doing so not because they want to, but because they have to. And you want to know how to find travelers like them again in the future should we experience a similar event. So I categorized the type of travel that you should be pursuing now into three: distressed, term, and essential. And again, Amy referenced a number of these in her presentations. Sadly, even with COVID-19, there are still things like house fires, flooding from broken pipes, and other situations that displace families and other travelers, other people who need a place to stay with very little advance notice. Talk to insurance agencies, your local Red Cross. Let them know your hotel is open and available to help in these situations. It can make a big difference. Also, depending on your area, there may be existing travel activity that is continuing during this crisis, but only for a finite term. Things like international students who had to vacate dorms but can't travel home, sanitation and security companies needing rooms all of a sudden, and construction and other project-related travel that hasn't been halted. They still need places to stay. And the third type is specific to COVID-19. A lot of these are the ones that Amy mentioned. Essential businesses, media, emergency medical, government, National Guard, transportation companies. They are still working and may need accommodations either for their work or to reduce their exposure to family and friends after working. Some cities are subsidizing hotel stays for these essential workers. This type of business is also a great one to provide room and meal packages to the guests, so they don't have to worry about finding food, especially if working long or unusual hours. There are also a number of ancillary revenue sources that don't require overnight stays in a hotel right now. Gift cards with no expiration date, prepaid travel packages, and trip insurance on future bookings are all great sources of revenue that also give peace of mind to the traveler who may be uncertain about when or where or how they can travel again. Many of you may already be doing this, but you can deliver food to local employees of your key accounts or residents who live near your hotel. Talk to your clients about letting certain employees use the company's direct bill account for boxed meal deliveries to the corporate office of an essential business, for example. And finally, this is an emergency situation. If your choice is to close your hotel completely or keep it open to serve as an auxiliary hospital or medical facility, then you could consider that choice. And my understanding is that municipalities are paying government per diem for these stays. It's somewhat controversial in our business because we're scared about what people will say about the hotel when it reopens to the public. But if that's a concern, I think the message can be communicated as the hotel was community-minded in a time of need and served a purpose to help people, particularly if I'm an owner-operator on the line and my choice is to take this kind of business or risk closing the hotel forever. I'm going to choose the option that keeps me from losing everything. This downturn is impacting everyone in our industry. These are just some measures to generate cash flow during this crisis. Remember, the cash flow, not profits, keep businesses open. Even if you decide not to pursue these measures right now, every hotel sales organization will be served well to dedicate time and attention to the items in the next two sections. So long as you cover your variable costs, you are making a positive financial contribution to the business. When times are good in our industry, we tend to veer away from doing the fundamental things that make the sales department so valuable to a hotel when times aren't so good. In fact, there are many in our business right now that have never experienced a downturn and aren't sure what they ought to be doing. If this describes you or members of your sales team who have gotten a little lax over the years, now is the time to get back on track. Even if this is just a reminder to many of you, here are a few fundamentals to which you should devote time and attention now. Like Amy said, it's still okay to prospect. It's still okay to make sales calls. It doesn't mean you're insensitive. It doesn't mean you're greedy or self-centered. It means you're a professional. How you go about these tasks in an environment like today's, however, is important and will determine whether or not you're perceived as a good professional. As a salesperson, you should be a trusted advisor to your clients. This is the basic principle of consultative selling. As their advisor, you have your client's best interest at heart, always. Your success comes through their success, no matter how they define it. And if it doesn't, then you're spending your valuable time with the wrong clientele. If you haven't been in the habit of doing so, study your client's business and industry. You're looking to understand what generates the need for travel or gatherings at those customer organizations. I've listed here just a basic flowchart model that you can use. Some key accounts will have 100 or more boxes, and this works not just for corporate accounts, but social and other markets. Included here are excerpts from a corporate and a university example. The idea is to create an organization chart of all of the different types of business or potential business in a company or market segment, and you can use your time now to identify who are the specific people that influence all of those different types of need for travel, meetings, or events. And hint, it's generally not the travel manager or your brand's global sales office. When you reach out to these clients and prospects, ask to schedule a telephone or video chat appointment. Nobody likes it when a salesperson calls or messages them out of the blue and starts running on about hotel features and product information. Reach out by phone, email, or LinkedIn and tell them why you're reaching out. Ask if they would be able to assist you and invite them to schedule a time to meet or discuss their travel needs in more detail. If they want to talk to you while you have them on the phone at that moment, great. But especially right now, you can't possibly anticipate the distractions everyone is dealing with. If they confirm a time to meet you, you'll be respected as someone who is organized and professional and will have a better chance of getting undivided attention and a better outcome from the conversation. For clients who are ready to see your property, you can take them on a site tour via Facebook Live, Zoom, or other service. Do this for individuals or groups. Record one of these sessions and reuse it in your future sales efforts. Just get permission from anyone who may be on the line or do a virtual walkthrough by yourself for the recording. If you want to make these fun, schedule it toward the end of the day. Tell your clients to grab a glass of wine if they'd like and join you as you show them your property. Now is also a great opportunity to block yourself some time to review your online profiles, collateral, proposal templates, and other sales support materials. Were they in need of updating before COVID-19? Has anything that has happened now changed how and what you'll be selling after this experience? For example, add details about things like hand sanitizer stations being included with your meeting break setups, because you can be certain those kinds of questions will be coming from meeting planners going forward. And if you're a sales leader, take a few moments over the next several weeks to reflect on ways to make your sales team more efficient and effective. What cost containment measures worked recently that didn't negatively impact productivity? What have you learned from this experience that should influence your decisions about staff deployment, reporting, and other procedures, and the systems you and your sales teams use? What can you do to optimize performance in each of these areas before getting swamped again with day-to-day work projects? And finally, use this opportunity to focus on individual and organizational learning. There are a number of resources from HSMAI and other organizations, and now is a great time, as Dr. Stephen Covey used to say, to improve your effectiveness by taking a moment to stop sawing and sharpening the saw. Invest time in your skills and the skills of your sales team. You know your needs better than anyone, but generally speaking, I find that the development areas needed most by salespeople are business acumen, consultative selling, and prospecting strategically. I also add negotiating to this list because it's very timely. Business conditions will eventually return to normal, but with one key difference. It's going to be a buyer's market when they do. As we discussed already, the work you are doing now will greatly impact how quickly your hotel and our industry bounces back from all of this. I sincerely hope you haven't laid off or furloughed your sales force. I understand, though, that cost considerations are real and expenses have to be minimized when revenues are falling short. I just caution you that cutting revenue-generating activities will increase the length of the downturn for your property and prolong the time it takes to recover. If you absolutely have to cut revenue-generating staff, here are some ideas to make it less detrimental. Rotate staff using mandatory PTO over the next several weeks. Rather than leave no salespeople or one salesperson at work while others are at home furloughed with PTO balances in the bank, have staff take a week off at a time so you can extend the department coverage with as many salespeople as far into the future. Do you have sister properties in your portfolio where you can share staff to do sales outreach on behalf of multiple locations? If not, what about hotels in other markets that call on the same clientele? Rather than lose 2 months of sales time, see if you could prospect in cooperation with each other since you aren't competitors. Converging disciplines means that if you have sales, marketing, and revenue management staff on payroll and have had to reduce force in each of those areas, you might consider temporarily having one person handle certain tasks from each of the disciplines. For instance, things like responding to inquiries, follow up with existing clients, reviewing promotional offers from your competitors, and updating images and content online can be done by fewer people than normal given the circumstances. It's also a unique cross-training opportunity for the team. And conversely, if you don't have any staff of your own, you may find that contracting a few hours a week from a task force sales agency can be helpful at this time. And a final point I want to make on talent that concerns me. If you furloughed your top salespeople, you run the risk of losing that talent to other companies. The best salespeople are valuable and can sell for other industries or even your competitors. You'd better take care of them now and make them feel secure, or you and our industry could see them going to work elsewhere. Amy was spot on with her points about follow-up and nurturing prospects in what she called the hidden revenue zone. Filling the pipeline with as much qualified business as possible is the best way to ensure your hotel realizes its fastest recovery. What worked after 9/11 in your area when people were scared to fly? Depending on your market, there seems to be a general sense that business will return in the following sequence: drive market, family reconnections, mandatory business travel, Smurf group, discretionary business travel, and convention and leisure business. The final 3 points in our discussions are to promote, prospect, and protect your business now for more stable future results. Everybody will be running recovery promotional offers, so make sure you think about yours now and how to differentiate from your competitors. Think about the different constituent groups you want to target: meeting planners, loyalty members, local business travel, family, social reunions. Have your offers in the can and ready to go when the time comes so you don't fall behind. Talk to your clients now about how their travel needs might change, both positive and negative, and plan your response to those. If a corporate account decides to keep certain departments working from home permanently after the pandemic, for example, might that create an opportunity for quarterly face-to-face meetings in the future that didn't exist in the past? Use your prospecting time now to find out or trace the conversation for an appropriate time to ask. And finally, there are a number of activities you should be doing to protect your business before recovery happens. Things like knowing your price position in the market before key accounts come back and ask for reduced room rates. Over the years, we've trained buyers to automatically ask for discounts when demand drops because we've given them out so freely when they do. Instead, negotiate value-added offers and more favorable booking terms if necessary. Resist offering unqualified discounts and consider bundling offers to make pricing opaque. When discussing cancellation and other concessions that your hotel made or is making for certain bookings, use the conversation as an opportunity to ask for future business. For instance, in a conversation with a meeting planner, you might ask something like, if we extend the rebooking period for your new hire group for 2 years, will you introduce me to the person who handles your training courses? Also, I like to sign multi-year agreements during periods of uncertain future demand to take customers off the shelf. This ensures my hotels can count on a certain amount of revenues that can't or won't go to our competition while we work to rebuild other business. Alternate with other properties or destinations if you have to in order to get the bookings you need. And finally, look for weak or vulnerable competitors. It's okay to say that because chances are they aren't on this call. Chances are also good that they're the ones who furloughed their salespeople. So reach out and build relationships with their accounts while they're not at the office. And if you're really forward-looking, reach out and build relationships with their top salespeople while you're at it too. I hope that Amy and I have presented some information and ideas that will be useful to you. If you take anything away from today's session, we hope it's knowing that your sales efforts right now will decide a lot more than just how well you mitigate the effects of the current situation. And by focusing on the fundamentals of selling, you, your hotels, and our industry will be in the best position to bounce back as quickly as absolutely possible.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, Amy. We're going to pivot to some of the questions. We've saved about 10, 15 minutes here for questions before the hour is up today. Ed, I'll give you a little bit of a break. Amy, let me direct the first question to you. You'd mentioned about adaptability and flexibility. How did they come into play when somebody's trying to rebook or considering rebooking for customers? I think there's a lot of people in that situation right now where there's an awful lot of rebooking going on. You want to comment
absolutely.
on that?
Sure. We are definitely seeing a lot of that as well. I think every hotelier that I've talked to over the last several weeks has said that's been a large majority of their time that's focusing on rebooking. The good news is that clients are rebooking and not simply canceling. So that I think in itself is a real positive. And I think that, every property and every company, from what I've seen, has done a really great job of reaching out and extending a hand and understanding through that rebooking process. I think it's just, without getting into the nitty gritty, it's approaching it with heart and compassion and working with the client, as from a salesperson to a client, and then from sales to your property team, as being an advocate to make sure that you get them into the dates that work best for everyone. And I think what I've seen, the best things that have happened are clients and sellers working together to find what's a win-win for everybody, for the organization, the client, and the property. And if we can all just do that and come with compassion, I think it works out.
That's great. Thanks, Amy. Amy, as a follow-up to that, you mentioned, quality and educated questions about the client's business and their future to present sellers from feeling authentic, while still being compassionate. Do you have any examples of questions where your team has had success with when approaching customers that when they didn't have a prior relationship?
Yeah, definitely. I think the questions that are working really well are asking them, what would travel normally look like for your organization? Because we don't have a relationship with them, right? And everybody is dealing with this in a different way. And then how do they see that changing for them, or do they see it changing when things open back up? What are they discussing internally about the future of travel? And I think that it has opened up a ton of dialogue to really deeply understand pretty quickly. And we've been really surprised on one hand and not so surprised on another how open people are and just they're willing to connect right now. And I think it's because we've all just come into this more grounded, compassionate state, and maybe there's a little less noise. We've got some time to breathe and have these kinds of conversations.
Great, thanks. And here's a question, and you already may want to comment on this, but when a hotel is currently closed, and what ways do you recommend advising customers of your plan to reopen, and what types of things should you be communicating while you're closed? Ed, do you want to take a first stab at that? And then Amy, you can weigh in if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, I think, being as transparent as possible is always a good policy. So, if your hotel is closed, I think, that's not an uncommon situation right now. It's okay to say that you're closed. I think it also says a lot about the hotel and its optimism for the future that it still has salespeople reaching out to clients to talk about the future. So I think right there's a good message to communicate just in the activities that you have. So I think, customers understand that, the communities, there's a lot of uncertainty. It's okay to say that there's uncertainty with the hotel. If I would pick up on cues as to what might be a concern, if there's concern about, cleaning processes to reopen, I think, emphasizing those, that's important. But if it's also about availability and, information about business that they need to plan, go ahead and have those conversations. I really would take the cue from the customer. And I think that's why scripting some facts ahead of time is helpful, because it does ensure consistency in that communication at a time when there's a lot of uncertainty.
Okay,
cool. Amy, anything to add about how you communicate the process of when you're going to reopen?
Yeah, I would say anybody, for sure, really anyone who's opened a new hotel probably has gone through this as well. So it's being really closely aligned with your operations and communicating that the needed information back to the client when the time is right, and just being really well aligned.
Great. There's a comment here that talks about how this current month is really a period to prepare for the relaunch of each hotel. Special offers and things that can be added. Ed, what other types of things should they be planning while they're planning to relaunch? Are there any other things that should be in that toolkit?
As types of offers, Bob, or just in general?
What types of messaging should would be appropriate in your social channels and so forth during this awkward period of time?
Sure. And I think all communications, it's best if you think about the target audience for them and not have one standard form of communication that goes out to everybody. And so, for things like recovery promotions, that's why I think, targeting certain clientele, something that you're promoting to meeting planners, might be very different from something that you're targeting to local business versus loyalty members. But if you'd come out with just your standard recovery package or something to communicate about reopening to those groups, well, then, some of the message is going to get lost because it's not going to resonate if it's not targeted directly to them. So think about what's important to each of those constituent groups and then craft that message. I think that, business travelers in particular are anxious to get back on the road. They just want to make sure that the conditions are safe when they do so. Meeting planners, to Amy's point, treating it like a new hotel opening. They want to know that the hotel is going to be open and have all of the services and functions that it needs. So, you can do things to incent them, but also give them confidence that the business will return and will be fine once the recovery happens.
Great. It sounds like by a couple of questions that we've got a couple of our listeners that may be in that unfortunate group that's been furloughed for an interim period of time, and they're looking for some ideas of where they can find some other sales training to sharpen their skills. I'll mention one thing, and then Amy and Ed, you may want to just wrap up with this comment with some encouragement for these folks. But certainly on the HSMAI website, there's in our coronavirus center, we've been aggregating some of the different offerings that are available for free or low cost or scholarships that are out there. So I would look online for a number of the online certificate programs. This is a great chance to really spend the time to study for any of the certifications that are in HSMAI's suite of certification programs, or if there are other areas outside the disciplines of sales, marketing, and revenue management that are a way to really make you round out your skill sets. Take advantage of those as well. Amy, any other suggestions of some other training resources?
Absolutely. There are so many great trainers out there who are willing and doing a lot of webinars. I know you can find them on, I'm happy to connect with you as well. I think honestly, as some words of encouragement for those of you who are finding yourself in a furlough situation, we are going to come back from this and there's going to be more work to do. And so don't give in to the fear and the anxiousness right now. I'm holding you up, saving space for you. And I know that you're going to be in a really great place, especially if you take advantage of the free resources that are out there to help you through this time. So, just lots of love and encouragement out to you guys. I know we're going to all be okay.
Great, thanks. Ed, any other quick thoughts?
Just a final point on that. I would also add to it that I'm a big proponent of peer mentoring. You don't always have to have a mentor that's somebody that's, at a higher level of experience than you or in the industry. I think there's a lot that we could do as peers to keep each other motivated and also accountable during times like this. So, don't be afraid to reach out to your network or create a new network of people that are your peers, because they understand as well as anybody what you're going through, and they could be helpful to you in areas that you might need right now, and vice versa.
Great advice. Ed. I know a number of HSMAI chapters are also actually just having Zoom calls, and whether it's a virtual happy hour or a morning coffee with each other via an online chat is definitely a way to stay connected also with your peers in a particular market. So look into some of those opportunities as well if you've got a chapter in your market. Well, that's all the time we've got for today's session. Thank you, Amy and Ed, for sharing your insights with us. And thanks to our live viewers for joining us. We'll be sending you a link to the recorded version of this program. And as I mentioned earlier, it will be available online for you or any of your associates to view on demand. Thank you again for joining us today. Stay well, and our best wishes to you for a very successful recovery. Have a great day.